Lord, yes, papi, hit me one time and make it funky.
I was brought up and told to have no bed. I was brought up and told to have no bed. I was brought up and told to have no bed.
Welcome to the Full Circle Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, David Roberts. I'm rolling solo tonight without the OG Dr. Neil Holmes or the oral historian Andre Taylor. But that's okay because I have a full house. With me today is Randall Hall, who is the CEO of Hall Entertainment, LLC, and Ms. Delane Bracken, who is the director of his upcoming show, Spades. And before we get into that, Randall, one thing that fascinated me about your story, was when your father actually shared this information. And so when I saw your show, it made me think of, how Tyler Perry started, because he had kind of, and I know he's controversial. Some people love him. Some people think, whatever the case may be, but he's successful, and what made me think about him was how your show Spades is something that ties into the Black community in a strong way, much like he tapped into the church culture. So before we get into your show, and just so you know, we are the masters of the shameless plug. When we have people on here, we want them to promote what they have going on. So don't feel shy when it's time to talk about that. I'm sure you won't be, or you wouldn't have got to where you are now. But why don't we talk a little bit first about your company and how you got started and what drove you down this path?
For me, it actually started in the middle of the pandemic. I was watching a lot of theater companies and how they weren't responding to our Caucasian theater companies and Caucasian producers, and how they weren't responding to African Americans and their demands for promoting positivity within the Black community and the works that they produced. And it's, to me, I said, well, if they're not going to do it, I'm going to do it. And not only am I going to write it, but I'm going to produce it. I'm going to find artists from throughout the country that are writing about the positive things that are happening to African Americans. And I'm going to produce those works so that we can tell our story the way we want it to be told.
And excellent. When I think of Louisville, Kentucky, I guess I think of Muhammad Ali. So how did you arrive, knowing personally that your roots are in, Northeastern Ohio? How did you arrive in Louisville?
Actually, my wife went to a job fair because she had just graduated with her undergraduate in education, and went to a job fair and got a full offer before she walked out of the fair for me and her at the time to move to Kentucky and she be a teacher here in Louisville. And we prayed about it. We asked God about it. And we said, okay.
Okay, good. Now I saw that the company started in 2021, where you had mentioned, during the pandemic. So is Spades actually your first production?
It is actually my second. We wound up postponing all of our 2021 productions to 2022. So the first show we did was entitled The Mountaintop by Katori Hall, which I actually helmed as the director. So I served as the director and the producer of our first production. And then for this production, because I was the playwright, I desired to have somebody else direct this production so that I would have the opportunity to just enjoy the show.
Okay. Now, Ms. Bracken, Delane, you're the director of this upcoming production, Spades, which by the time this airs, you would have already had your opening night, but I think we'll still have enough time when this airs to promote a couple of more shows that you're going to be having, because this is going to run from March 31st to April 2nd. And then you have also added a live streaming option April 2nd. So Ms. Bracken, how did you get involved with this project, Spades?
I get involved when I met Randall a few years ago, pre-COVID. He had came to our church. He was doing the youth program. We were having a workshop for them. and his aunt goes to my church. So she was like, let me introduce you to somebody. He writes plays and all. Love the theatrical field. I'm always open to new opportunities and getting my feet wet. So I was like, okay, I'll talk to him after the workshop, because we were all running around trying to make sure our youth were together. And when we had talked after the workshop that Sunday, after the youth concert, and he was talking to me about he had a whole lot of plays that he had written, and at the time he was looking for actors and actresses for the play, as well as directors, stage managers, things of that nature, to have a solid crew to help him launch his vision. So I said, I'm very interested in directing, to be able to have my own debut. I served a theater group for 3 years as the assistant executive director. So I really wanted that debut to be able to come in and direct a full cast by myself and see the vision that Randall had in the plays that he had written. So we had talked about a few of his plays, and in one of the plays, he wanted, I think it was called Truth. So I was like, oh yeah, I want to direct that play. And then COVID hit, so we hadn't talked or anything. So I just had forgot about it. So I was like, well, if it's meant to be, it'll definitely be, but I wasn't going to stress about it until a few months ago, like about October, was it, Randall? October, November, he had reached out to me, asked me, was I still interested in directing? So I said, yes, I'm very open to directing. We haven't talked in a while. What you got? Because I was under the impression he may had already put on his plays in Frankfurt, because I live here in Louisville. So I didn't think nothing of it until he said Spades. And I was like, what? He talked to me about Spades before. I don't know how to play Spades. I'm an Uno girl. So I was like, do I need to know how to play Spades? Because I don't know how to play Spades, but I can definitely direct people, So I said, let's give it a shot. And we had talked about it, and he was running his Mountaintop production before we became acquainted to start running auditions and getting the cast set up for Spades. So, and while he was running the Mountaintop, I said, I was gonna let him finish that production. Once that production finished, then he reached out to me, and we started moving forward with auditions in February, and then started our rehearsals at the beginning of this month to get ready for opening night tomorrow.
All right, I know you really looking forward to that. And so for the other people that I know, it's many people that are looking forward to it, that are a part of the production, people that are looking to go to the production. So for those watching, and this is a question for both of you, and either one of you could start, but what can people expect from Spades?
Go ahead.
They definitely can expect a great laugh, because it really, the piece really tells the story of what really goes on in a real Spades game. Like I said, I'm an Uno girl, but when I've been sitting here watching them playing rehearsals and the intensity that comes involved, somebody reneges because they threw the wrong card out. It's the intensity of it. So they really can see how the story comes together, and really anybody can relate to the story, whether, Caucasian, African American, Asian, because we all play some types of cards, but those real Spades players are going to be sitting down in the audience and going to know exactly, like, wait a minute, hold on, did they really throw a heart out and it's supposed to be a club? They'll be able to have those moments, because Spades is really being played on stage, and those in the audience who are real Spades player are gonna, it's an intensified moment. It's a whole lot of laughter, it's a whole lot of love, but it's a whole lot of Spades playing too. So it's keeping yourself out of the renege area.
Okay.
And I think the other thing I would tell you that they would find is realistic comedy.
Yes.
I found as a playwright, all too often, comedy was oftentimes rooted in our trauma and not in the positivity of Black culture. So one of my objectives as the playwright was to try and find where I could tell an authentic Black story that was still funny. And we didn't have to over exaggerate anything.
Yeah.
And I know I'm definitely looking forward to it. And let's switch gears before we, I'm going to get more specifics about Spades. But, you know, there's a lot of young people that watch, you know, our podcast. And a lot of young people, I guess, I don't want to say have delusions, have just think that if they see somebody on a show or whatever, they're just living the life, you know. And just to give you an example, I have an 11-year-old daughter. And so we both belong to a community theater, and we were in a play together, A Christmas Carol. And so, and I was just taking her there, and they said, we don't have enough men, can you audition? So I auditioned. So I got in the play and actually played her father. And so when she found out that we'd have to rehearse, you know, twice a week, 3 hours each rehearsal, she was like kind of taken aback, you know, 11-year-old. We have to rehearse that much. And I said, well, you know, you see your little actors on these Disney shows, and you say you want to do that one day, you know, it's hard work that goes into that. It's not like you just, you know, pop up and you're cute and funny and they just put you in front of the camera. So I'd like to hear from both of you, what would you say to young people that are looking to be in entertainment?
I would tell them it's hard work. Like, we have been in rehearsal for the last 4 weeks, Sunday through Thursday, from 6 to 10 o'clock or later. We have literally been in rehearsal, rehearsing, memorize. We had 4 weeks to memorize our lines. Some people had to learn how to play spades because they didn't know how to play when they got into the cast. Some people had to, like, it was very intense. Acting is not for the faint of heart, as I tell people. Acting, performance, because I have an undergrad in music and a master's in music, let alone being involved in theater. Performance, any kind of performance, requires an extensive amount of rehearsal, an extensive amount of dedication, an extensive amount of accuracy, and an extensive amount of practice.
And that's something that they need to hear. Ms. Bracken?
Yes. And definitely to echo off of Randall, like he said, it's hard work, but it's hard work that pays off when it's all said and done. You know, nobody knows what goes on behind the scene. All they see is a pretty picture, like, oh my God, you know, it's a play, but there's a whole lot of intensified moments behind the scenes, you know, working on those actors who are inexperienced, and you have to bring them to that actor level. Like when they audition, you see something in them, so you want to give them that opportunity to actually let that flower open up and blossom. And that's what I really look at when I'm working with people. I like to empower them and inspire them to be their best, you know, regardless of how they're feeling inside. It's my job as a director to really feed that into them, so that way they can really open up with that confidence. Because I've worked with experienced actors and actresses, I've worked with inexperienced, and the cast we're working with now, we gave them that opportunity because the majority of them are inexperienced. Like, this is, you know, a whole lot of their first time actually getting their feet wet, but during the audition we saw something in them that we know they'll be able to pull this show. We just got to pull it out of them. So we bait it up and we go fishing, and we reel in what's good, you know, and what's not, we just leave it alone. So it's hard work, but when it's all said and done, it's fun. It's fun. It's fun. It's like a hairstyle. You wash it. Oh my God, what's gonna happen? And then, you know, when it's, hey, I'm here, you know, after those hours of drilling and yelling and do this right, wrong stage cue, you know, we're able to open up a masterpiece, and that's what I'm excited about to present to the community. So it's hard work, but hard work pays off. You know, teamwork makes the dream work.
And, you know, that leads me to another question to you as a director. What are some of the challenges you face? Because, you know, I have some, you know, artistry in me as well. My daughter, I associate with other artists, and artists generally can be very sensitive. So what are some of your challenges when you're trying to pull the best out of someone and you got these different levels of experience, you know, inexperienced to experienced, and they think they know everything. What are some of those challenges as a director? You probably could talk for about an hour on that.
Yeah, because you do have those who comes in with the big eyes and the little U's, you know, and it's like a stoplight. You have to stop. You know, when the light turns green, we move forward together. We don't move forward separately. So some of the challenges is really making them and helping them understand that acting isn't doing what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Acting isn't doing what I do, because I'm gonna act my role differently, regardless if we got the same role. My confidence levels might not be your confidence level. You see, so in between that is really, it's really keeping the fair balance. Yes, sometimes we have to raise our voices so that way, you know, we could be heard and we want it to stick, not just go in one ear and out the other. But challenges are fun, because without challenges, there's no masterpiece. You know, right. If there wasn't no, we were talking about this earlier in between the hiccups that we had, you know, enduring coming into opening night, we just have to stay focused and stay on the same team and just listen and take heed, because there are some that takes it personal. Like, oh, she's yelling at me. But at the end of the day, like, at the time, you have to know how to separate business and pleasure. This is the business. So we're not playing our personal selves. We're playing and putting on a character to be brought to real life. So you have to learn how to separate. When we get in here, you're not your stage name. You're your actor's name. You're your character. That's how we identify you. And then when business is over, you're back to your government name. And some takes it personal, you know, and others don't, because it's constructive criticism. And constructive criticism is my best friend, because without constructive criticism, we don't have that appreciative feedback coming back to us. You know, we're not going to get that, because we don't know how to take that criticism and run and work on it to be the best. You know,
let me add something to that. The reason I, as a playwright, wanted a different director, and one of the reasons I chose Delane to be the director, was because I knew that she would be able to say, Randall, this don't make sense. Randall, we need to adjust this. Randall, we might need to tweak this. Randall, we might need to do these things, so that we could have the best play and presentation for the people when they arrive. And let's be honest, me and her butted heads sometimes too during the show. But we both knew that this was where each other was coming from. It wasn't about, both of us had the same goal in mind. Let's put on a great show. And because we had the same goal, we didn't take it personally. At the end of rehearsal, we hugged, said, I love you, and I see you tomorrow.
Right. You know, and Randall, I'm glad you chimed in, because I was going to ask you, and you kind of touched on it, but at the beginning you said, I'm the playwright, I want a different director. So is there a balance between, you know, you having a director and you had a specific vision? Was there ever a time when Delane directed in a way that might have been brought out something that was different from your vision, but it actually turned out better?
Yes, there's a couple things that happened. Okay. Now, on the other hand, there's a couple of things I said absolutely not. I'm standing 10 toes down. There's no question about it. There's a couple of things I was like, I'm standing 10 toes down. I'm not moving. You can't push me out the way. And you used to be a wrestler. I got my good wrestling stance and said, push me, I dare you. But there were other times that she brought some great things out of the script, or she noticed things and was like, Randall, the timing don't make sense here. And I'm like, oh shoot, I need to fix this. Randall, I want to help you, but I love the fact that her thing was, I want to help you bring your vision to life.
Okay. Yes.
But at the same time, I was like, listen, you're the director. I also want you to put your 2 cents in it. I want your identity to be identified in this as well, right. Not just mine.
You wanted your vision, but wanted to empower your director as well.
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. Especially because I know that this is her directorial debut. So what we do on stage really represents her as well. This is my debut as a playwright and her debut as a director. What happened on stage represented the both of us. And I respected that this represented the both of us. So it needed to show both of our identities by the time we were done.
Now, let me ask you this, because, and I know both of you, you know, I'll say a few years younger than me, probably more than a few, but you probably are well aware of the fact that, you know, going back to 50s, 60s, 70s, our people, we've struggled to tell our stories the way we wanted to tell our stories because we just were not, you know, in control. We weren't the gatekeepers in entertainment. So that's one reason that I was so proud of you when I saw this. I'm like, this young man has his own company. He's telling our stories, and I'm sure he's telling them, you know, the way he wants to tell them. Before you started your own company, because it's, you know, fairly new, had either of you had any experiences where you were working for lack of a better term, through a mainstream company, and you kind of had challenges trying to tell our stories the way you wanted to tell them, but you were having resistance? Okay.
Absolutely.
Please share one of those.
Delane, you want to take this one? Because I got plenty of them. I'll let you have this one. I'll gladly let you have this one. Because mine go all the way back to high school. So
yeah, I can remember very well. I remember when I was in college, and that's when I really was getting my feet wet as a freelancer because I'm a business major. So holding an MBA was like, okay, I got this master's degree, but yet I loved acting so much. So I said, I'm going to do both. I'm going to, you know, work my business side, but yet I'm going to figure out how to be an actress out here in this world and make it. So I remember in college auditioning for my very first play. And, you know, when you walk into the room, I've always been taught when you walk in the room, own it. Right. At that, I didn't feel like I owned it because I was the only African-American who had auditioned for the female role. So when it said any ethnicity, oh, shoot, that means any color. And then when I get in an audition for them to sit there and like,
right.
I'm doing my audition, so I'm thinking like, yeah, they love it. Oh, I'm going to slam dunk for them to tell me at the end, well, we were looking for a Caucasian woman.
Well, why didn't you say Caucasian? I'm sorry.
So I'm like, well, on the paper for the audition, it said it was open to any race. I'm a female. I went to audition for her. And then they made me do the whole monologue to be sitting there in the panel of 4 like this. We're looking for a Caucasian woman. Thank you. And they start talking amongst themselves. From there, I had 2 options. I could either break and figure out something else to do, or I was going to take that and say, no matter what, I'm going to make it out here. Somebody's going to audition me and somebody's going to give me the role, regardless how many auditions that I go on, no matter how many no's I get. All I'm looking for is that one yes. And it's that one opportunity to open up the door to make you run and fly like an eagle. So from there, I said, I'm an eagle and I'm going to soar in the world. No matter how many rejections I get, I'm going to keep on making them. I'm going to keep on making it. Even still, you know, sometimes I go on audition, I get a little scared, but then I always have to tell myself, you own the room. There's nothing for you to be scared about. This isn't brand new to you, even though I've had like Randall, I got a couple of stories, but that one was really like my first, just like my first time auditioning like ever. And I mean, it broke my heart, but then at the same time, I said, I mean, there's plenty still opportunities out here. You don't just stop on one.
Right.
One. And
well,
so
and that leads me to why I started this company. Mm-hmm. You know, it was, I wanted to start a company that you walk as an African American, you walked into the room and everybody in the room was Black. The director was Black, the producer was Black, the playwright was Black, the cast was Black, the stage manager Black, the costume designer Black, the lighting designer Black. Right? I think Delane, we have made history. I think we have an all Black creative team. The prop manager Black.
We do.
We have history here. We have an all Black cast and crew, which is rare, even in African American theater.
So why don't you share one of your experiences, you know, like Delane shared, that kind of led to this? One
For
that
me,
stands out.
For me, it was opera. As I said, I have an undergraduate in voice performance. I started my undergraduate degree at University of Akron before my wife and I moved to Kentucky.
Zips, baby.
And thoroughbreds, baby, thoroughbreds. For me, it wasn't necessarily an audition, it was a transfer, right? So I transferred to Kentucky State University, which is an HBCU here in Frankfort, Kentucky. And the cultural difference of learning and being taught classical music is what changed my mind. I went from having a Caucasian teacher who didn't know anything about the Black church to having an African American teacher who knew how to take my Black church voice and transform it to sing opera and Black church. She didn't tell me one was negative. She encouraged both of them. Her philosophy was, if it pays a check, you better learn how to sing it.
Right.
So it was a cultural experience when I transferred schools, and I found that one school was degrading my culture and my ancestry and telling me that I shouldn't be doing it, when another school encouraged my culture and my ancestry and said, listen, you can do both and be successful in both areas. And then she pointed out how many gospel stars actually have their undergraduates in voice performance and said, look, he's got an undergraduate, she's got an undergraduate. I taught her as a professor. She was one of my students, and now she's singing nationally, gospel music nationally.
It's wonderful.
So that experience for me is what taught me to change, is what showed me, hey, Randall, you don't have to be subjective to what white people tell you have to do.
Right. And I can add that if you had that experience at Akron when you were there, you can imagine what my experience was when I was there with your parents, you know, back in 1987 and 1988, you know, and it was basically like going to a small, for us, you know, I don't know if it's changed, but it was like going to a small Black college within a predominantly white college, because there was no rapport at all. You know, it was like going to, with the, you socialize with those 2,000-3,000, you know, Black students that were on campus, you know. And you make another great point about, you know, all Black creative team. And that's one of the reasons why I personally support Tyler Perry. I'm not a fan of the Medea character. I'm not a fan of a lot of what like, I don't run out to all his movies. I'll be honest, but I still support the concept, you know, of what he's trying to do, and, you know, tapping into that church culture, and, you know, just some things I like, some things I don't like, put it that way. But overall, I support his vision, I guess I should say. So before we get into I want to close with specifics about Spades and where people could see it. But before we get into that, why don't you talk about some of your upcoming projects? Because I saw there was something else coming up in, I believe, June.
Yes, so we are, again, one of our focuses of our company is finding Black artists who tell Black stories the way we want to tell Black stories. And so our show in June is called Black Creek Rising, by a guy from Los Angeles named Ladarian Williams. And again, it's an original work by a Black writer that I'm choosing to produce, because I also know that Black writers struggle to get our works produced.
Right.
And so it is my goal that every season that I do, we will do at least 2 to 3 original shows by Black writers. And so I'm excited for Black Creek Rising. I think it's going to be a fantastic production. This is the total opposite of Spades. This is the bring your tissues and get ready to cry.
Right.
It's very intense, very, very intensive. So I'm excited to do the work on this production as well.
And we're excited to see what you have coming up, as years down the line and moving forward. So why don't we close with just letting everyone know? I know everyone isn't, in the Louisville, Kentucky area, but there's also a live streaming option. So why don't you just let everyone know how they can see Spades?
So there are two ways to see Spades. Number one, Spades will run at the Russell Theater at New Directions, 516 South 17th Street, Louisville, Kentucky, March 31st, Thursday, March 31st through Sunday, April 3rd in person. March 31st, April 1st, and April 2nd are at 7:30 p.m. And Sunday, April 3rd, we have added a Sunday matinee. So at 3:00 p.m. So we are excited. We do want to warn you, Saturday is almost sold out. So it may be sold out by the time you see this podcast. Get your tickets to Sunday. The other option is we will be live streaming Spades Saturday evening, April 2nd at 7:30 p.m. You can get all of your tickets at hallentertainment.eventbrite.com. Again, that's Hall Entertainment, all one word, .eventbrite.com. And both options are at that link. You can, again, you can see it in person March 31st through April 3rd, or stream it live on April 2nd. We are excited. It's going to be a fun show. It's going to be a funny show. I warn you that if you show up in person, don't sit in the wrong seat. That's all I can say. That is all I can say.
All right, well, hey, we appreciate both of you joining us. And I'm going to make sure that I put all the information for this production in the subtitles and in the references to this video. But you know what? I want to close with one question for both of you, kind of off topic, because you're both in entertainment, and it's what everybody's been talking about, right? I just want to get your take on the Will Smith, Chris Rock incident, since I have two people in entertainment. What's your take, Randall?
I watched it live. I'll tell you that much.
Mm-hmm.
I was flabbergasted. That's number one. Number two things. I wrote a comedy. Comedy will always be comedy. I believe that in comedy, someone will always be offended. That's just the truth.
Right.
If you look back at some of the greatest comedians in history, they were the most offensive comedians in history. Comedy will always offend someone.
Yeah.
That's my personal belief. But on the other hand, I also believe as a husband, I've been married almost 9 years, you do what you got to do to protect your wife.
Okay.
I believe that wholeheartedly. You do what you got to do to protect your wife. And if somebody says something crazy about my wife, I might be liable to slap somebody. I can't deny that. But on the other hand, I'm also realistic to know that comedy is offensive. And when you sit front row at the Oscars, you're setting yourself up to be the brunt of somebody's joke.
Right.
And definitely to echo our friend though, it's both ways, like he said. I mean, I've been married almost 15 years, and I'm pretty sure my husband would have did the same thing if we were sitting there and that happens. Lord forbid it doesn't. But on the other hand, like Randall said, comedy is comedy, and you can't get offended with it. I've always been taught, turn the other cheek. Sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt. It could have just been a better way for it to be handled, because I saw it live as well, and I was shocked. I thought it was, part of the script, like, oh, okay, that's what's up. But when I started audience faces, I said, oh, that was
took me out. I'm sorry.
It was shocking. It was definitely shocking. So it's a hard cookie to swallow, because it can go either way, because he's defending his own. But at the same time, he could have just, you know, swallowed his pride and put it to the side. You know, you got too much going in your career to, you know, mess it up. You know,
and I think it ruined his speech.
Yeah.
I think it ruined his win.
Yeah.
So,
and moving forward, we'll see how, if at all, it impacts his career. Yeah.
right.
So we'll see. So with that, CEO Randall Hall, Director Delane Bracken, I want to thank both of you for joining me. Wish I had my co-host to ask some questions, especially Dr. Holmes. He always asks them. He goes further than I can go. You know, that was my teacher. So I'm sure he's going to, when he sees this, he's going to wish he was here. But again, thank you both for joining us, and we wish you much success, continued success with your entertainment company, and definitely much success with the Spades production.
Thank you so much, David,
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us.
No problem. We got to have you again.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You too.
You have a wonderful night.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Lord, yes, papi, hit me one time and make it funky.
I was brought up and told to have no